An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 140. I'm Aaron Pallier.
I'm Darlene.
We have been talking about doing this movie for quite some time. Because it is on our Rocky Horror Picture Show bucket list of sorts, we have made a point of saying that we will do every single movie referenced in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Flash Gordon? It's
Flash
a series.
Flash Gordon's not a movie, it's a serial, and I've always said that we're not going to do serials because the plots they don't hold together.
Well.
Yeah, they don't hold together well. So we have watched personally all the Flash Gordon movies. I mean, the Flash Gordon serials. So we can say that. We can say also, yes, we do recommend them. They are fun, but the plots are utter garbage. It's all about Ming being completely nuts. Flash
over the top nuts.
The rockets being classic phallic rockets. Flash Gordon being an over the top hero. Dale Arden being the damsel in distress. Yeah. So that's out. That means we only have 3 other movies that we have not covered on Earth versus Soup. This is one of the 3.
I thought there was something
only
else.
3. There's only 3 movies left that we
Invisible Man.
We have not covered Invisible Man. There's another one that's and I don't have the name of it. I have it written down. It's not in front of me. And then Dr. X, which is the one that we watched today. Dr. X is from 1932.
Strange.
It's a strange movie. It's in 2-color Technicolor.
That only appeared in major cities, though.
Yeah.
And they thought they lost it.
So the version we watched was on Amazon Prime, and that's the 2-color Technicolor. It was very, very expensive to do, and Warner Brothers, I guess, didn't really like using it because it was so expensive to use. Did it make this movie look gorgeous for 1932? Yeah, it did. It worked really, really well, but it was expensive.
It was based on a 1931 play, The Terror.
Okay.
It had a budget of $224,000,
which is an incredible amount of money.
It made $594,000.
Multiply it by 20 is the money in today's.
It's 76 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of times that I am in the movie and going, what the crap just happened? Because it goes dot, 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 dot. And you're going from one thing to another, to another, to another.
You know what it is that I think we're going to shit on this movie a little bit, but we're also going to praise this movie. Okay, so please don't immediately assume if we're going to gripe about something that we don't like.
I think I'll say that it's something to watch.
Yeah, I think I'm going to recommend this too. I'm going to get that out of the way first because there are criticisms I have of this movie. And part of my criticisms is I think there are too many characters in it for the plot that it is. That no one gets a lot of screen time, including our main characters, the people that have the top billing, except Xavier, Dr. Xavier. He's arguably our main. Well, no, he's technically not our main character, is he? But he is.
He's the top bill, and
is
then
he?
Faye is the.
Faye Ray is in this from King Kong. Don't say Ray. It's Faye Ray. She plays the daughter of Dr. Xavier. Dr. Xavier is top billed. She's second billed. He has a big part in this.
And this is one of the. There's a section of movies. This is one of them.
Pre-code?
That are not pre-code, that both her and him are in together.
Okay.
As top billing.
Well, this is also pre-code. So there's like trigger alert kind of stuff in this movie. Cannibalism is directly referenced and talked about openly in this. Sexual assault is talked about in this. There is a brothel right in the beginning. I mean, this is pre-code. It's weird because this is not stuff that you would ever see in the 50s or 40s once the code came around, the movie code. This is also likely an allusion to Dr. Albert Fish in this movie because Fish hadn't been caught yet. I'm going to do a little side note here that I read far too much about Albert Fish in my last year of undergrad because I had to do a study on a criminal of the past that hadn't had a ton of books written on him. So like there was a list that was given to us of talk about this person and this person's crimes and context of the time. And it was a list maybe of 20 different people. And I just randomly chose Dr. Albert Fish because he had doctor in his name. And I thought, okay, so this guy is going to be like some sort of psychopathic doctor that's doing surgeries that are unwarranted. Well, it turns out that yes, he was doing surgeries that were unwarranted because he was a cannibalistic killer who enjoyed, okay, trigger alert, just go forward a little bit. He was a cannibal. He enjoyed eating genitalia of underage children. He enjoyed molesting them and everything else that is awful and horrible that you can possibly imagine Albert Fish did. And he was known as like the Moonlight Killer or the Moon Killer at some points before he was caught. And the murderer in this movie is referred to as the Moonlight Killer. And the Moonlight Killer is sexually assaulting people and cannibalizing parts of them.
I don't think they ever said sexual.
It doesn't come right out, but they say that she was violated.
Okay, because
so that's it's implied heavily.
This is where I can say that they could take down some of the characters because they have all these police people
that don't matter. Yeah. So this is kind of a weird, difficult movie that has a strange tie-in to a real life killer. That the only reason I think I will link Albert Fish to this is
because of the name.
Because of the name and the fact that Albert Fish assaulted people and cannibalized them. He was an awful, awful human being who does not deserve the name human being.
Can we go off of this topic?
Yes, so let's get into this. I do recommend this film, and we're going to gripe about big chunks of it, even though we're going to recommend it.
We start in New York City on...
Right, yeah, it's the docks near a place called Mott Street Morgue. And there's a dude that's hanging around the docks at night on a full moon, and he's like trying to hide his face from coroners and cops that are coming to this morgue. And you immediately think this guy's fishy. Well, and I'm not using that term as an Albert Fish reference. He's acting like an asshole. And it turns out this guy's a reporter, okay?
And a jokester.
And none of the jokes are funny until the last moment. And then it pays off. But all of his jokes fall flat all the way through this.
Because they're hand buzzer.
Like joy buzzer, or him just talking to like skeletons and joking with them. Like they're inanimate objects, and he's obviously just playing up to the screen to keep people engaged in the film. But all those scenes are kind of meaningless in the end. Like the joy buzzer stuff I can get.
But that could be that it's 1930s and not our...
yeah, okay, fine. So another body is brought in, and this journalist now, he sees a body being brought into the morgue.
His name is Lee Taylor.
Played by Lee Tracy. He runs to the nearest brothel to use the payphone. the girls are joking with him. And when I say this is a brothel, it is more, yes, it's down by the docks, but it actually seems kind of high end. Does that make sense? Did you get that? There was a guy down there playing classical music on an upright piano. And the guy says, like, can you play Prelude? And he freaking does. Like, this guy is clearly a classically trained pianist.
And one of them says you can go take the phone down the street.
And he's like, no, honey, I need to get this in as quickly as possible. And I don't know, the brothel girls are actually kind of funny. I don't know. I enjoyed them. There's like a cat house maid. Even in the credits, it's actually kind of funny. There's the madam, played by Mae Bush. Louise, the cat house maid, played by Louise Beavers. Anyway, there's a lot of actually like cute little 2-second bits inside this cat house. And I thought, this movie is going to be interesting because it's going to say something about sex workers being people too. And that would be like a weird message from the 1930s. Everyone accepts that today.
None of the killers were a sex worker.
None of the killers?
None of the killed were sex workers.
Yes, they were. One of them was. She was a prostitute. One of them was a prostitute.
Oh, because I have hospital girl killed at the hospital.
Yes.
Scrub woman.
Yes. And
I started to write down the others, but
it was one of them is a prostitute. Okay, so he talks about how there's been another moon killer murder. And then like another body gets brought in, but he then decides that he's going to sneak into the to the morgue by acting like another dead body. And he does. I don't get this. Like, he has even a toe tag on at this point that says like John Doe. And he acts like a complete asshole all the way through this.
Well, there's also that scene with the policeman on the docks.
Yeah.
With him buzzing, getting the guy with the buzzard, and then the
policeman gives him a cigar with like an explosive device in it, so it just blows up in his face. And I'm like, okay, screw you guys. Like that this is getting dumb. Like, he can be a little bit of a jokester or act a little bit like a doofus, but this has gone on to like Three Stooges kind of levels.
But this is the time before Three Stooges, or it's the time of Three Stooges. So
inside the morgue, a coroner who we learn is Dr. Xavier says that strangulation with strong hands is the cause for the death in this most recent moon killer murder. But the left deltoid was cannibalized. He says it was cut out or eaten. Okay. And that there was also an incision at the base of the brain. But that was done. Both of those things were done after death. Okay. This is the 6th killing in so many months. So there's been 6 murders.
And they're all happening on the full moon.
All happening on the full moon. Why? I don't know. Anyway,
I think it has to do with the doctors that are in this Academy of Surgical Research.
So one of the cops thinks that the murderer goes to this institution of medical whatever.
Stephen.
And the journalist hears all of this and goes, "Oh my God, I'm in on a piece of information that I can get published." Okay. So he does get like a story printed the next day. Anyway, we meet Dr. Xavier's daughter, played by Fay Wray, and she sees her father in the library late at night, and she's just concerned for her father's health, like staying up so late, being so driven by his research and now these murders. We are then told, we're then shown that the cops are coming to the Institute. They want to talk to everybody involved. And so we now have maybe 20 minutes worth of introduction to all the professors in this institute. And I think some of this is where the movie drags a little bit. We're introduced to Professor Wells first.
He's a student of cannibalism.
He's a student of cannibalism.
But he's an amputee.
He's an amputee, so everyone thinks he can't do it because he only has one hand. He has kept a heart alive for 3 years through
Neutralysis.
electrolysis.
Oh, is it electrolysis?
And I'm like, okay, no, he's just electrically stimulating the heart to pump. I don't think it's... okay,
It's
fine.
not lying.
Science, capital S, exclamation point. He has a fake arm. The police immediately think he's innocent because there's no way he could just strangle somebody. He doesn't have the hands to do it because it's not like somebody had a fake hand and a real hand and strangled them. It was 2 large, strong hands.
Then there's Dr. Haynes.
Dr. Hayes is then introduced, and he had 2 associates that he was shipwrecked with for almost a month. And one of them, quote unquote, disappeared. But him and his associate were fairly well fed for being adrift for a month. Take that for how you will.
He's also the person that was studying something, and it turned out to be French pinup art.
He's been experimenting in brain grafting. I wrote that down. He's been experimenting on grafting brain tissue into different people.
Because
my next note is this whole place seems like it is a facility for mad scientists.
Then there's Dr. Duke, which is in the
Dr. Roids, actually. It should be Dr. Roids. Rotes.
Rotes is they're done at the same time because Dr. Duke is the one that's in the wheelchair and is the grouchy old man.
Yeah, and he has Roids has this weird obsession with the moon.
He wants to know if the moon affects the psyche.
No. Yes and no. He does. He does want to think that, but it's more along the lines of he has a theory that if the sun can give somebody sunstroke, why can't the moon? And this is, me slapping my hand against my forehead. I don't know. You can't even hear that. I'll just do that. Who in the hell gives these people money? This is insanity. If I was a police officer, I'd say, all of you are just going to be under arrest right now. All of you.
What could you arrest them for?
Public indecency, at the very least, for just trying to teach the youth this crap. I don't know. This is insane. And here's the thing about this movie that it does that works. And I'm gonna talk about it immediately now that we've talked about all the different crazy people that are under suspicion. Everyone in this movie is possible to be the killer.
Yes.
Because they're all effing nuts.
Even Dr. Xavier, who does...
Because Dr. Xavier has this crazy EKG machine that he's able to detect people basically getting a hard-on for murder. That's basically what it is. But you have to be strapped into these electric chairs and have electrodes shoved up your butt to be able to tell. This movie there is some weird things in this.
Then it immediately goes to a scene where Joanne finds Taylor, which is the journalist, up a fire escape,
listening in on these conversations. Yeah.
And she holds a gun to him.
She's full on pulls a revolver on this guy and says, I don't like people listening out my father's windows. Okay, fair enough. He's joking around. He's literally being threatened by a woman with a revolver at point blank range. And he thinks it's time to freaking joke. He's joking around. And then he has the balls to question if she has the license to carry the thing. And she says, yes, I do. And walks away from him like she doesn't give a crap. This guy should be terrified. And in fact, at this point, it's possible Fay Wray's character could be the killer too. She seems like she cares about her father, but she also has a short fuse and is willing to pull a gun on somebody. and shove it into his stomach. The guy's even joking. The journalist is even sitting there joking. Normally, I don't have pretty ladies, shoving guns in my stomach.
Yeah, because he has a very bad day when he calls
somebody
and he says, I had this happen and this happened and
Yeah. And most of it's your own damn fault for being a jerk or being a real loon. So, like I said, the journalist writes a story on the murders, but he wants off the case because he's scared.
I wouldn't blame him. That's where he says that to his thing that he's
his boss. He's like, no,
I've had this happen and this happen and this
and
happened.
He goes, fine, I'll put you on like
he said he even said, let me do the crossword puzzle.
Yeah, and he said, I think the editor said something about like a knitting circle story or something like that. And he said, fine, no, I'll stay on this story because I guess that was like a living hell to him. So it turns out that everyone is going to go out to Dr. Xavier's home because Dr. Xavier does think that somebody in his institute is doing this.
And the commissioner, Steve, allows him 48 hours to figure it out.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, right? But it could be Xavier. For all they know, the cops do suspect him, but they suspect everybody at the Institute because all the murders are taking place near the Institute. And it has surgical type wounds. So it makes kind of sense, doesn't it?
And there's a funny little thing between, you like that scene.
What?
Where Taylor comes to the house, Xavier's house.
Yeah.
And talk with the flowers and talks to Mimi, the maid.
Mm-hmm.
And gets into the house and is looking through things. And then Joanne comes in.
Yeah.
Catches him with pictures and stuff.
Yeah, he's being a real creep again.
And as he goes, she
kicks him out.
Kicks him out. As he goes away, Mimi
dumps dishwater
on him.
And says, hey, take this with you. And yeah, I'm like, okay, he deserves it because he's effectively breaking into homes under false pretenses at this point to get a story. And he's searching through personal photos.
And actually puts them in his pocket too.
Yeah, he's being a real bastard, to be fair. Okay. I don't think there's any character in this film that honestly is a white hat, which is weird because I mean, even Joanne Xavier, the daughter, Fay Ray, she's overly aggressive and terrible. She's like the damsel in distress again at the end of this movie. But let's be fair. You don't draw a gun and shove it in somebody's gut.
Again,
gun safety, folks. Like you don't pull a gun and aim it at somebody unless your intent is to open fire. Pulling a gun and showing it is one thing. Okay? Like, but she went right up to him and shoved it in his gut.
I don't know why Commissioner Stephen is giving them this 48 hours.
There's no reason for it. Okay.
But the next thing we see is a train station that says Blackstone Shoals.
Blackstone Shoals on Long Island. And this is where Dr. Xavier has his home. And he brings out all the professors to tell them everybody is under suspicion and they're all going to meet in the lab in 10 minutes. So the reporter is there again because he knows exactly what's happening. And he listens through a window and he falls through an open door that just so happens to be open. Now, again, another complaint I have with this movie is almost everything is convenience. Everything is just a contrivance to get the reporter into places where he can hear things and put clues together. Does he figure anything out in the end, Darlene, though?
No.
Nope. And which is
this
part
is
of the
where
problem
we
in the movie.
could have the commissioner have a detective on instead of having a bundling reporter.
Yep.
If I was to make this a modern film, but I really think the reporter is supposed to be, like you said, Abbott and Costello.
Yep. It's Three Stooges. It's Buster Keaton. It's really physical humor
it's 1930s.
Or lowbrow. I mean, Buster Keaton was great. Don't get me wrong. Three Stooges, I love. The thing is that this is not a Buster Keaton or Three Stooges movie.
It's not a comedy. It's a horror.
It's supposed to be horror. But every scene except for two.
But we've been
seeing
this comedy character in a lot of these things.
I know, and it just
throws us off because we are from this time and not 1930.
So the reporter ends up diving into a storage closet to avoid the house workers, and it's filled with really sus stuff. Okay.
There's what? How many? 5 skeletons?
This is 1932.
Folk skeletons.
This is 1932. Those are real skeletons. Those are real medical. Those are real people.
Those are full skeletons because they've also got skulls that you can't even have today.
There is medical skeletons of people that were born there's jars of weird shit. Yeah, and it's like here's somebody that was born without a lower half, like without anything below the rib cage. Did you see that? And they had like these huge arm bones, and it was detailed enough for me to say that might be a medical display.
Well, he's in that closet
playing around with people's skeletons.
I called it the skeleton closet.
Yeah, and he's just being a goofhead.
And it's literally a skeleton closet.
But he's being an asshole with all these skeletons, with these human remains.
And you have
for 5
Odo,
minutes.
which is the butler, and Mimi.
Otto.
Oh, sorry.
Odo is from Deep Space Nine, Darlene.
Odo and Mimi. And Odo is scaring, trying to tell the maid what she's going to be doing for this experiment.
Okay, so yeah, the experiment that's being set up by Xavier is basically, since he can detect if somebody's getting a hard-on for murder, he is going to show wax figure recreations of all the murdered people and then recreate the latest murder by using Mimi wearing the actual like smock,
the actual clothes.
Yeah,
they got it from the morgue,
and I just don't get it.
The butler is being totally horrible to Mimi.
So everyone's strapped into these giant chairs. They get probed up their butt. They're strapped in with their wrists,
and they get told they get showed it's a full moon.
It's a full moon, and can I say that the laboratory has amazing equipment in it. This is actually a really good set.
I was like, it
looks like a completely different movie.
Did not fit the surroundings.
No, but it looks like suddenly we're suddenly now in a science fiction movie. And by the way, we've been kind of going through this plot fairly quickly. Like you said, this is 70-something minutes long. We don't get to the lab until maybe 50 minutes in or 45 minutes in. Up until this point, it's been slapstick mystery.
Yeah, and it looked almost like they didn't fit each other.
Yes, and now suddenly it is science fiction horror. Which is, again, this is strange. But this laboratory is all set up. Everyone's strapped in. It turns out Dr. Xavier is running it, but he actually has probes on him as well. Dr. Wells, though, since even the police don't suspect him because he only has one hand, he can't be doing this, is actually recording all the data off in the experiment, like the equipment room or something like that. So Xavier shows all them the wax figures of these victims. Nothing seems to happen. The reenactment of the most recent murder is completed. And suddenly Reut's tube is full.
Okay, before this, we have the
EKG
reporter
tube.
gets knocked out by
Mystery gas.
Gas that is a hole behind the skeleton, in the skeleton closet.
It's another mad gasser.
Why he's taking notes.
Yeah, remember there was a mad gasser in World War II down in Indiana. This is one of those things.
And the lights go out.
Lights go out.
And they find
Reutz is killed
after being accused.
After being accused, but he's dead. He's got like this incision at the back of his brain. How in the hell did this happen?
Dr. Duke is now walking.
Yeah, oh my God, it could be him. Because he's like even shocked. Oh my God, you see me walking. I am walking.
Dr. Wells says he was hit on the head,
Yep.
and Taylor is found in the closet.
Yeah, he's in the closet, and for whatever reason, since this guy has broken into these homes and effectively been stalking Fay Ray now, he's welcomed in as a guest, and he's going to flirt with Fay Ray over breakfast and a trip to the beach the next day. Guys, god damn it. Like, now,
Wow.
okay, I'm going to stop for a moment with this plot, because I mean, we're bitching about because the plot's terrible. I'll be fair.
The plot is too...
It's just a mess. It's a mess. I want to say something positive for a moment before we continue with the plot. Fay Ray is a damn joy in this movie. She is not on screen enough. But when she's on screen, she has that charisma. Just like she had in King Kong, where when she's on the screen, that's Fay Ray. My God, you realize why people loved her. Why people still do love her. She's amazing in this. Amazing. Every moment. So back to the plot now, because I wanted to say something
Back to the
positive.
plot. Jonah wakes up and finds her father in the lab, and he's looking over the body of Dr. Rotes,
whatever.
and there's also one of the other doctors, and I don't know which one it is, that looks at the body too.
It's the guy that was in the wheelchair, right?
Dr.
Ugh.
Duke?
Yeah. And he says, my God, this man has been cannibalized since he died. Like, at some point, that means the murderer really is still here. He's still stalking around somewhere. So, is it the reporter? Who knows at this point? That's the one thing this movie does well, is that there's enough suspicion to everybody in this
that you don't get it.
It really could be anyone. I mean, there's people that are more likely, and to me, I had two people that I thought were more likely than not the killer, and one of them was two people, and I honestly thought it was either the reporter, or we'll get to that. It turns out that it is Dr. Wells, the man with one hand.
Then we go to the scene that doesn't, again, another scene that doesn't fit.
Yes.
And it is the beach scene.
Well, the beach scene is where it is good because we have Fay Ray being Fay Ray.
Yes, but it doesn't fit the movie.
No, it's her and the reporter flirting now that I guess she's turned on by guys stalking her and her, threatening them with death.
I thought it might have been the butler too.
Could have been the butler. The butler. But I thought that's too obvious. I thought that was too obvious. I thought it was either going to be the happy-go-lucky reporter.
And these scenes flip. This is one of the things that I actually have the problem with this movie. It's like a flip show. Because the next scene is Jonah in the maid's room, giving a sedative to Mimi because she's hysterical.
Mimi, the housekeeper.
Housemaid.
And she ends up seeing a freaking... she reads tea leaves in her teacup, and it's literally a skull with a cross. Like, it's voodoo stuff kind of level of tea leaf reading. Because, I mean, normally it's not that on the nose, but it was very clearly, hey, this is a skull and a cross. It's his death. And she washes it down with gin. Right? Yes. It was gin. I'm like...
She grabs the gin from her pillow, below her pillow.
So I guess Mimi is a closet alcoholic. I don't know. If you truly believed that you could read tea leaves and you saw an actual skull and cross, like a clear skull and cross.
And this is where
that's a point to read.
Right after that is Taylor scooting down a hallway for some reason in the dark.
Yep.
And you see the hand go to grab him.
Yeah, but it disappears.
It disappears because he's fumbling around.
So we go to... we
and then he falls through a secret panel.
He goes through another secret panel. Okay, but hold on. Just ignore it. Let's go to our reveal of Dr. Wells. It turns out Dr. Wells is the killer, that he has discovered a way to make synthetic flesh
That was a creepy scene.
That is actually arguably the best scene in this entire film. It feels firmly like it is something out of the late 60s, early 70s. Like those like drive-in schlock, grindhouse kind of movies.
Yeah, it
is so weird.
You were being filmed right. The Jacob's ladder was right in front of you.
And this guy is like smearing crap all over him. But he makes like an artificial hand and then like electrifies it, and it comes to life and attaches itself to his stump. He starts rubbing this synthetic flesh, and he's like, synthetic flesh. And it's all over his head, and it grows into like extra skin, so you can't really see who it is.
And his other hand becomes like the other one.
Yeah, it becomes monstrous. And basically, he has developed this synthetic flesh to give him more strength. He claims that he is going to make a crippled world whole. Okay, that's how he says it. That he has developed this to heal people that have had amputations, that have lost limbs through war or, whatever reason, disease. And you know what? That's awesome.
But he kills Otto.
But he's killing Otto. He's killing people to do it, and that's ethically wrong.
And then he does this very long, as he's got his
mustache twirling villain monologue. Yep.
Right in front, as he's got Jonah on that bed, Joanne, and all the other doctors around him, handcuffed to the chairs.
And he's menacing Fay Wray. And finally, like, it's the reporter that attacks him. They get into an actual fight that actually looks very good.
And Joanne gets the keys and starts unlocking
everybody. And the reporter gets a kerosene lamp, hurls it against Dr. Wells, and then kicks him out the window, where he falls to his death
on the beach
in a fireball. Then we get the message that Taylor is going to marry Joanne.
As he's talking to his
editor.
As editor.
Then they start kissing, not the editor, but the reporter and Fay Wray. They start kissing. And like the lights go out and you hear the hand buzzer. Oh, Mr. Taylor. And oh, Mr. Taylor. And that's it. That's like the end. But that's the payoff to all the slapstick crap, is the one funny line from that, coming from that, being that he buzzed her ass or something. Oh, Mr. Taylor. It's the one funny line from The World Is Not Enough, James Bond. I thought Christmas only came once a year. God damn, that was brilliant. And it's the same kind of like me getting up out of my chair and going, that was the payoff, and that worked.
But you had to go through all this bumbling idiocy.
You had to go through hell to get there. Mind you, I like The World Is Not Enough as a movie, but like there were no puns based on that, like no jokes up until that last line, and you had Denise Richards and Pierce Brosnan in bed, and I thought Christmas only came once a year. God damn, that was good. That was good. Anyway, you even laughed in the theater. You're like, oh my God.
I knew something like that was going to come, though, because she kept on sitting there saying, don't you...
Yeah, I've heard every joke. I'm sorry, I don't know any doctor jokes. And yet it was this constant like subversion of the payoff up until that last bit. And that's the thing, like there's no funny jokes at all with that hand buzzer. Like it always falls flat up until that last one. Oh, Mr. Taylor.
I really thought that, at some point in the movie, I actually thought that buzzer was going to be the one thing that catches the criminal.
Oh, like he's like the hands come out of somewhere and start strangling somebody, and
he has that on his hand.
No. Like the hands are strangling somebody, and then you hear that buzzer, and you're like, "Oh my God, it is the reporter!" Like,
no, I
just forgot to take the buzzer off.
I didn't think it was the bumbling reporter.
I honestly, because
it was me think it was the butler.
Yeah.
or Wells.
See, the butler did it is too obvious. I thought it was going to either be the reporter because he was so bumbling that it was stupid, or Wells. Because the fact is that they dismissed Wells immediately for only having one hand. And I'm like, then he's very possibly the murderer.
There was a little bit of a time when you saw Dr. Duke walking. I thought
that was weird, but he was so like unsteady on his feet anyway, because I think it was one of those things that he did have trouble walking, but he played it off as more than that. I just have a little bit of trouble. It was more of him playing off as like complete paralysis. So we've bitched and actually praised this movie, but let's go back and do a very quick like review of our what works and what doesn't. My what works are Fay Wray is an American icon. She is amazing in this film. She honestly is. She has charisma. It oozes off the screen in any scene that she's in. She steals it away. She's great.
It never bored you.
The movie never bored me. Yeah, it was always engaging, but it was more of like, what the hell's going on?
And the who killed it, you were constantly thinking of.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it. I hadn't seen it before. So I will also say that the 2-color Technicolor looks really good. This does not look like 1932.
You like the hallway thing.
Oh, there was some good forced perspective stuff in this too. But I think that would have worked better in black and white than it did in the 2-color Technicolor. I'm just saying, like, the 2-color Technicolor, there were scenes where it was gorgeous. It was lush.
And their matte paintings sometimes, or whatever you want to call it,
were pretty damn good.
Were good.
This is not Universal, right? I didn't think this was Universal. Anyway, production company, First National Pictures. Yeah, so this is kind of a weird production company at the time. What else worked? Man, the Albert Fish connection to me worked because it is so weird. Like, you don't really see things on Albert Fish very often. He's such a terrible person.
Because, like I said, this was a play from 31.
Well, Albert Fish was still killing at that time. I forget when Albert Fish
start.
Oh, Albert Fish started back in like the teens.
Okay.
But he was mainly preying on children.
Ugh.
Like, dude, I don't want to talk about Albert Fish ever again in my life. Honestly, I don't. I just brought it up. I'm happy that I haven't thought about that son of a bitch in so many years up until this movie. And I don't want to think about him again because he's that kind of an awful human being. He doesn't deserve the title human being. Regardless, I think the connection to him works in this movie, especially when viewed in the context of the time. It makes it feel a little more... It would have made it feel a little more scary.
Was he in New York or...
Darlene, I forget at this point. I don't want to look him up anymore.
Okay.
And so I've tried to purposely put a lot of that stuff out of my head. Anyway, what didn't work was there were too many characters.
Yeah.
Too many side characters. Even the main characters that were integral to the investigation, let's say, like the other doctors that were at this institute, didn't really need to be there. Not many of them. Like, maybe you could have taken one guy out. I don't know. That's just me. I think that the slapstick did not work.
But again, that might have been something that was needed because of the time.
Yeah. And, it would have worked if it was a little... the comedy would have likely worked if the subject of the movie wasn't so grim and dark. Like, it's a cat burglar or something like that. And then you have this kind of comedy and he's going into brothels and joking with the sex workers for the phone. And you have this amazing pianist who's playing like Rachmaninoff, and, or something like that. It's okay. That could have been really fun. but you're dealing with cannibalistic rapists who are murdering people. Comedy like this doesn't really work with it. It just doesn't.
I'm just saying it might be from the 1930s.
And I think Fay Wray was underused. And the guy that played Dr. Xavier was underused, because I actually think he was a very good actor in this too. Lionel Atwill. He was very good in this too.
And those two are in a few movies together.
Yeah, they are. Like Captain Blood, I think, is the one of them, right?
Captain Blood. I didn't write all that.
Well,
stuff
Lionel
down.
Atwill died in 1946, so it's not like he had a career for a ton of time. I know he was in House of Frankenstein.
It was either 3 to 4 of them that they did together.
And I think they worked well together on screen. But it's such a weird feeling movie.
Now, do you want to end up watching this next one, which is The Return of Dr. X?
Yes, I do. And that's okay. So we said we recommend this film. To me, it's a light recommendation because it's so weird. It made me feel weird thinking about Albert Fish again. It made me... the way it's shot is strange. The comedy is off-putting. But the thing is, it's so beautiful and interesting and weird that...
It is definitely a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. I do recommend it.
But I really think the one thing that you're put off by with the comedy is something of that time.
Sure.
And you're not
I'm willing to
that time.
Darlene, I'm willing to admit that. I'm willing to admit that and give the movie the benefit of the doubt. At least there was a payoff even I could laugh at the end. Okay? That was funny. I am recommending it. You said you'd recommend it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sets were
pretty damn good. Like the lab at the end was amazing. What an amazing set.
And to have a closet that was just that weird skeleton.
Yeah, but that made me feel a little weird.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, that made me feel a little weird though. Because I guarantee you most of that is real human remains. That's the thing. Because I mean, it's not like it's easy to recreate that at the time. That's why even in that one House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price, the skeleton in that is a real skeleton. Like, you can make replicas, but a lot of times they would look fake because you couldn't get the detail, or you'd see seams, that kind of stuff. So it's easier to get medical skeletons, which are real skeletons, and go with it. But yeah, I want to watch. I'd like to watch the sequel at some point. And obviously we will review that for Earth versus Soup because it does fit in. Mm-hmm. I would, up until the 45 minutes in when we went to the laboratory at the house, I was like, this is not an Earth versus Soup episode. And then it goes completely sci-fi and synthetic flesh.
But you said horror actually goes with us.
It does. It does, but up until that point, it wasn't even a horror movie. It was a slapstick mystery.
Okay.
Up until that point, and then it becomes an Earth versus Soup episode.
We've watched some others that are...
Have we? That were that... Darlene, it would be like us watching a detective movie. Like from the 1930s. Or hold on, an old Sherlock Holmes film. I'm not comparing Sherlock Holmes to this movie because I think Sherlock Holmes would be far better, even with Basil Rathbone. I preferred Jeremy Brett, but where you have suddenly there's like one little piece of science fiction at the end of like, oh, Moriarty has developed something or other, or Sherlock Holmes uses a strange chemical reaction to discover X, Y, or Z. That's about... Then you could say, oh, well, that part makes it science fiction. Well, no, it's not really. And as much as I love like the Jeremy Brett stuff, I would never review it for Earth versus Soup, even though I think that's some of the best mystery stuff there is out there, because that's not the purpose of Earth versus Soup. And up until the point where it got to the lab, I was like, this is not an Earth versus Soup episode.
But then we wouldn't have done Haunted Hill. What was that?
Haunted Hill is a science fiction horror. Again, this movie wasn't even horror up until the end.
Anyway, we need to end this.
Yeah, we do recommend it. I don't know what we're going to do next. It'll probably likely be Universal horror film. We need to kind of go through and keep watching the Frankenstein and Dracula movies, plus the Mummy movies.
We need to do some science fiction too.
We do, but I mean, you can argue that all the Frankenstein movies are science fiction.
Well, we've done a lot of them.
No, not really. Not as many as you think.
Yeah,
I think we've
the
done
Ghost of
4.
Frankenstein, and we've got.
We just discovered another vampire movie that we need to do today. We discovered that today that we need to do.
But that's again horror, and we need to get more of our science fiction.
We mix it up.
Anyway, this is Darlene,
I'm Aaron.
and you have good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.